Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday with me, Ryan, aka Mac. This is a weekly show which covers everything from the world of Star Citizen over the past week. Links to everything discussed can be found in the description below, so let's get on with it. This week we take a look at how procedural planet ecosystems are created, plus how weather systems like sandstorms work.
A huge thank you goes out to all my patrons for your monthly contributions. Your support truly helps me get these videos to you. If you enjoy what I do and would like to help from as little as $1 a month, please check out my Patreon page. In return, I offer patron-only giveaways and gaming sessions with me as a way to say thank you.
Okay, so Around the Verse came from Frankfurt this week. First thing they mentioned was that it's the last week for the Super Hornet free fly, so sign up using the link in the description and test it out. 2.6, they say, is making great progress. New things are dropping in every day. The avocados have been working away on the new flight balance changes. They've wrapped up a few new Crusader missions. The new music logic system is pretty much done as well. 2 new ships are feature complete, they say, and they're ready for release. This is the Herald, which is the data runner, and the Vanguard Hoplite, which is the dropship variant. Arena Commander is getting some polishing, and the new item pickup system is in. The new camera angles are in as well. They're having many internal playtesting of Star Marine and getting some great feedback. Plus the network refactoring and improvements are getting wrapped up, which is obviously very important. So the studio update from Frankfurt started with QA, and they just mentioned that there's 3 testers, 2 of them working on the engine, 1 on Squadron 42 and FPS. The Homestead visual effects was next, talking about the sandstorm effects, which is made up of 3 different sprites, or 3 parts, or 3 particles. You've got thin sand texture, which is on the top. The thicker texture is below, which gives it more density, and then you've got lightning texture, which gives it that effect of thunder and lightning. They use optical flow maps, which give an unlimited frame rate, so the texture for the clouds will flow perfectly without any, regardless of what speed this sandstorm is moving at. And as the sandstorm approaches, they increase the speed of the animation for a more sort of foreboding feel. The fog volume comes up from the ground as the sandstorm hits the player. This is also used as an optimization technique for when the player is in the sandstorm. They delete the rest of it, and all you see is the fog. All the systems will be unified and controlled by the planetary weather system, so it's not just going to be like we saw on the Homestead demo, where it just rolled into that particular area. They're going to be dynamic. So they mentioned that the office expansion is complete, and they will show that off soon, but next up was the community update, and they said that the Origin M50 is available for all subscribers over the weekend. CitCon, which isn't CitizenCon, it's kind of the German CitizenCon in Frankfurt. This is a community-made event, had over 500 attendees. It was incredible. I wish I could have gone. Didn't even realise it was happening, to be fair. But also, if anyone is interested, there's a barcitizen.sc, which is a great website showing all the bar citizens around the world. I know of one in Australia that I've got to shout out, so do check for that if you live in the Australia or the Oceania area. And there's another one in Germany, I believe, so do check the websites if you are looking for a bar citizen. There's bound to be one near you somewhere. Most valuable post this week was Plural, as it was people helping on the RSI help desk chat, helping people get their answers for questions they may have about Star Citizen, so congratulations to you guys. And finally, they started talking about the ecosystem or the zone system for 3.0 and beyond. They say they're already at V3 now for the Planet Tech. The Homestead demo we saw was V2, so version 2. They started off with the first procedural experiment in October of 2015. Next up, they had the atmospherics. Then we saw Delmar at the end of 2015. 2016, in February, was the first player on the planet. After that, it was the first buggy on the planet in April. And they said that planets were mostly procedural, but not very customizable. It was either a jungle, a rocky, or desert. And then V2 came along, which introduced the ecosystem. So they have these 4 square kilometer terrain blocks, which they can use and just add terrain along all across the planet, which makes it so much quicker. Then they can pick terrain types with varying options, so you get different ground textures. Then with the engine editor, they're able to add and paint these ecosystems over the planet. It's very, very quick and looks very easy. So features that they have in work in progress are improving the vegetation placement and distribution. This is your trees, your grass, your greenery, making it so it's realistic. Water as well. The ocean was originally flat with it being a CryEngine. Then they needed spherical water. They now have proper waves and shading. It looks incredible. Next will be clouds. It's still very early stage, but these clouds will cast shadows dependable on the thickness of the clouds. The light itself, the sun will cast genuine light that you can see in the sky, and as it goes to sunset, you'll get that orange glow. So impressive, this stuff. They are doing lots of optimizations to make sure it runs smoothly. They did talk in depth about how this is all done, but it's very, very technical. If you are interested, I'll put a link in the description for you to get to that point if you want to hear it. Anyway, that was ATV. Let me hear your thoughts, guys. So in Reverse the Verse this week, we spoke to a chap called Pascal First, who is the senior environmental artist. And he's the guy behind the ship request console that we see at Port Olisar. Now he's creating textures and materials for planets. They are sorting out how terrain will blend together. He basically bridges the gap between artists and the people creating the code to make it easier. So the first question for him was, how do you tackle each ecosystem knowing that they need to blend together in ways that you don't even know how to? If that makes sense, I hope so. But he said that the mountains next to sand kind of work. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, so you'll have like a bright white sand and the mountain will be dark and it just will be too much of a contrast. But they do have artists which will point this sort of thing out. Concept artists basically set up the biomes so that they look correct. The same goes for ensuring the vegetation is realistic for the particular environment. So, you know, like a desert would have cactus rather than wet flowing leaves and so forth. Now they are thinking about art core. They need to ensure that the tech is there before going into production, because obviously the art core is a structured, a building, a man-made structure planet. The whole planet is full of man-made structures and buildings, not like what we've seen so far with the ecosystems. So they need to make sure that they get that tech sorted before they go any further to make it quicker. Next question is, will we be able to see permanent weather effects on the environment? For example, a lightning strike damaging a tree. And he says the plan is for terrain to change, maybe due to explosions. So if you throw a grenade, it'll leave a little crater, and you know, bigger explosions will leave bigger craters. But he did say they won't be permanent, which is a shame. But understandable. They did say that harvesting resources, so if you chop down trees, after a couple of months, if the trees have been chopped down consistently, then you will see a reduction in the amount of trees in that particular area. So the landscape will change over time visually, which is kind of cool. The next question is, tell us about water. How much interaction will we have? Now visually, he says it's in a good place. There's nothing yet in terms of interaction. All this needs to be worked out yet. But they're not going to block people from interacting with it. But things like landing on it or your suits to go underwater and things need to be sorted. They will have to see what the design team come up with. And they have had discussions about it, but nothing is final yet. So next question, will procedural generation be used on giant city planets, and how will this work? They say they've just started prototyping ArcCore. Now the architecture is sort of straight and angular rather than your natural vegetation where it's all flowing, so it's easier to create this natural looking environment procedurally than it is with buildings which are all 90 degrees and so forth. All this needs to be worked out. They want to use object scattering for procedural placement, like where we see mountains and so forth, but they're still just ideas. There's nothing practical just yet. Next question was, what is your favourite environment? And he said he's been looking at the latest pictures from NASA, so they have a lot of stuff which is inspiring for them. He really looks forward to creating alien planets where the vegetation and the different atmospheres, things may grow bigger, things may look completely different. It sounds very exciting. We've seen that Sulphur Lake planet, which looks very different to what we know, but you can only imagine things will get even weirder. So final question for this guy, how many ecosystems will there be? He says as many as they need. They may have a certain level that they come up with, but as they venture into other planets, systems, alien planets, they will add more. But it's all about investigating and just creating what is necessary. So to finish off with, we spoke to the director of cinematics. He works on the narrative PCAP for Squadron 42, so making sure that the stage in which these actors are playing on looks good for the shoot and they make sense. He's also responsible for all the cutscenes in Squadron 42. Many of them will be runtime. He said the rules for cinematics in Squadron 42 is, although they will have full cinematic scenes, which takes control of the camera and control of yourself, they are trying to keep it as much of a cutscene from the player's perspective. Many cutscenes will be interactive still, but if the player is present, then it will be from his field of view, from his perspective. Sometimes you'll have control of your character, sometimes he'll be on rails and you'll just have control of the camera and where to look. He also mentioned, though, if you're on a capital ship and you start acting like a jackass, then the captain will have you put in the brig, which is something I think we all need to try. Anyway, the first question for him was, will we see the same level of faces from the cinematics in the game as well? And he says, yes, they are the exact same assets, so you will see the same level of detail. Obviously, if you're up closer, it'll be a lot more detailed. Final question, is the populated areas of the Homestead demo the only area populated, or are there other areas that we have not seen yet? And he says the content to do this is still hand placed, so ships need to be placed by hand. They're not procedural. It will be great, he says, flying around planets searching for content. They will have bundles of content like a crashed javelin all over the place, but they're looking into a way to place them procedurally so that they don't need to do it by hand, because obviously these planets, like this particular planet, the Homestead, was 1,000 kilometers in diameter, which means that's a lot of space to populate. Obviously not all of it needs to be populated, but instead of doing it by hand, they want to do it procedural. They just need to make it work with logic and need to create the tools to allow this. Anyway, that would reverse the first, guys. Let me know how hyped you are. Also, this week we had a new Mining Rocks post, which is a monthly employee update from Shub Interstellar, the mining giants of the verse. Bug Smashers this week highlighted a new FPS bug in which vaulting would propel the player out of the play area. And finally, we had the latest subscriber town hall, which I shall bring in a separate video. So for those of you who don't know, myself and Miserable G have started a new fortnightly podcast live on Twitch where we chat to the talented community about what they do and how they do it. I will post it to my channel myself on Monday. Let us know what you think. We have big plans for episode 2. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and thank you to our subscribers, plus a massive thank you to our patrons as you make this possible. If you like what we do and want to help us make it better, follow the link in the description to our Patreon page to learn more. Stories. You may find maybe a dead guy or a skeleton in a vent, and you'll find out why he was in that vent. Like we saw with these ships, someone has gone in, they've taken over the ship, they're living there now. They're not just going to be wrecks in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Just to clarify.
Yeah, you went the crash course version.
Yeah. In at the deep end.
Yeah. And then